Okay, so we're up to over here on page 11A. 11A. 11 side A. And we're up to over here with Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara relates that Rabbi Yehuda Shara Ami Tanura. They called him Ami the oven. He was a guy who used to make ovens. In those days, you didn't get an oven delivered to your house. You built an oven in the house. So you used to bring in a guy who builds the ovens. His name was Ami, with an aleph, Ami Tanura, and he allowed him to go ahead, lemigdal Tanura, to raise an oven, basically to build an oven on intermediate days, on Chol HaMoed. As Rashi translates the words lemigdal Tanura, lemigdal means to grow the tanur, not talking about fixing the tanur, he's talking about building the tanur. He says, Lasis hatanur mechodesh, to make a new oven on Chol HaMoed. Further, this Rabbi Yehuda, he allowed Rabbi Bar Izbi, that was his name, Rabbi the son of Izbi, limigdal mehulta, to make a net on Chol HaMoed, to weave the net and make the net, to actually it's a sift. A nafa is a sift, to make a sift on Chol HaMoed. That's what the Gemara relates. But the Gemara says, but it's not so. Shouldn't be so. Vatoni Rabbi Bar Shmuel. Rabbi Bar Shmuel brought down a brisa in which it says, Vishovin. Previously in the Mishnah, we had a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama, whether you can straighten out the tanur. Koifshim, the Gemara called it. Exactly what koifshim means. Does it mean the Rechaim? But the Gemara, basically the brisa quoted by Rabbi Bar Shmuel says that everybody agrees she'ein goydlin tanur lechatchila, that you cannot raise and make and build an oven from the beginning. You're not allowed to do that. He says everybody will agree. Everybody includes Rabbi Yehuda. The same Rabbi Yehuda that allowed Ami Tanura to build an oven, he quoted him from a brisa that says you cannot raise a oven lechatchila. How do we reconcile what he ruled for Ami Tanura and for the other one? And the Gemara says, Loi Kashi, this is not a problem. It's not a question. Because Kan be Moisachama and Kan be Moisagashom. We have two Chol HaMoeds. We have one in the summer month, which is Pesach time. Pesach time, already the rains have stopped, and the ovens dry quickly. There is heat in the atmosphere, so when you build the oven, it heats quickly, and you can actually use the oven for Pesach. So it's considered a work that you can benefit from it on Pesach. So that's why you're allowed to build in a Chol HaMoed. When he said in the Bryce of the Rabbi Bar Shmuel that you cannot do it, he was talking about Sukkot over there. In the Sukkot, when it's raining, and because it's a rainy season, it takes a long time for the oven to dry out. And because of that, you're not going to be able to use it. So you can't work and build an oven on Chol HaMoed for the use of after. That's working Chol HaMoed for after Chol HaMoed. He doesn't allow you to do that. Let's look at the Rashi. So he says, Loi Kashia, can be Moisacham. B'moisach Chamos is Rashi, Kloimar, to say, Kishayeshi Moisach Chamos. When there is, I mean, because we're talking about Chol HaMoed, we're not talking about the summer, not every time. In a Chol HaMoed, when there exists sunny days, which is Kegoin BePesach, that is, for example, on Pesach, the Chavul Olma, the world is heated up, dried up. She'ein Yordim Be'Geshomim, because rain doesn't come down on Pesach. Muter Lasis Be'Tanur, then it's permissible to make the oven. And the reason is, Lefi Shalal Ter Yovesh. It gets dry immediately. V'yicholim le'efes boi pas beregel le'tzorech haregel, and you're able to bake in the oven bread in the Yom Tov for the needs of the Yom Tov. So you're allowed to build it because it dries quickly. It's the summer months. Can be moisag geshamim. But here in the Braisa, when he says that you cannot build it, it's talking about the rainy season. Can be moisag geshamim. So Rashi Koloimar, to say, not talking just any time, because we're talking about Chol HaMoed here. When there is rain coming down during the holiday, Kigoin Besukkos, like in Sukkos, so then Ein Oisiv Tanur, you don't make an oven then. Why? Because it cannot be immediately dried. It doesn't dry right away. Ad la'achar regel, only after the Yom Tov. The avatircha shaloi l'tzorech haregel. So he's troubling himself not for the need of the holiday, and that is something which is prohibited to work on Chol HaMoed for after the holidays. We don't allow him to do that. Okay, we'll do the next Mishnah.
Well, I thought
Yes.
the issue, like we said just before we finished, was whether it was Maseh Uman rather than...
When there's what?
Whether it was Maseh Uman, whether it was a specialized...
Right.
So that would be the criteria. And if this guy is, an oven installer, an oven builder, that would be the definition of Uman.
Yes, absolutely. So that's why we would actually not. But here, there's another reason that we allow it. It's no different. We allow to cook on Chol HaMoed or on Yom Tov even, right? Because it's for the purpose of Yom Tov. So if it is for the purpose, the other things, the jobs that we were talking about, where you required it to be a Maisa Hedget and not a Maisa Uman, that was for work that you didn't need for the Yom Tov itself. But if it's necessary for the Yom Tov, so then it could be done by a craftsman as well, because I need it for Yom Tov. So that wouldn't be a problem if it's working with Yom Tov. Here, the allowance for it seems like, to build an oven, you need a qualified person. It's not something. Here we have an Ami who built ovens. But because it's done for the Yom Tov, that's why it's allowed. That's why he allowed it. Okay? Mishnah. Next Mishnah. Further, the Mishnah says, we're still talking about Chol HaMoed. Oisin maka legag u'mirpesa. We make a fence. The Torah says that when you build a home, osiso ma'ikil legagecho, you must make a fence so that nobody falls down. So he wants to make a maika for his fence, and we'll see soon. Also what kind of a fence, and also ulimirpeset. Mirpeset is like a porch. A porch doesn't get a big wall. Rashi explains the Michael Mirpeset is a koisel kitano. It's a small wall. Ha'oisin al ha'itz the boys. they have these benches or platforms, shalifnei ha'aliyos gedolos, that are in front of great elevations. So I guess in order to climb, I think what Rashi means, in order to climb that elevation, they put these platforms, each like steps over there. And Rashi says, gives an example, Ke'ein sheyesh al sfas nahar Rainis, like the one that is on the edge of the river Rainis. I guess that's where, I don't know what the English word for Rainis is, but that's where Rashi lived. And they had these kinds of itztabois. Itztabois are, they're like platforms, and he calls them walls, I guess, because you come up the walls, and that's meant, I guess, also for protection. But the way you're allowed to build them is only Maisa Hedget, only work of an ordinary person, not a professional. Avaloi Maisa Uman, but not work of a craftsman, not a work of a professional. As we'll see in the Gemara, that if you use mortar and you paste it down, that would be considered more like professional work. But if you just put it with rocks in between, I mean, again, I don't know how this would serve as a protection of not falling down if you don't put, let's wait for the Gemara, but the Gemara will say what exactly is considered to be the act of an ordinary. But the Mishnah only allows for the work of an ordinary person, for a common person, but not the work of a craftsman. And we'll see in the Gemara what exactly it entails. Then you have in the ovens, there are cracks over there. I guess the heat causes cracks, whatever, there's cracks over there. So you need to close up the cracks. So the Mishnah says that shofin es hasidokim, you can close up the cracks shebetanur that are in the oven. How do you close up the cracks over there? So there looks like there's several ways to do it. One of the ways was they used to have, like we have these rollers that you roll over the asphalt. You know, they have those heavy rollers. So they used to use a piece of wood, a round wood, and that would straighten it out. It would also be pushing down with the hand or with the foot. Let's see in the Gemara. Umagilin, we'll see the Gemara will also explain what it means. You can roll it with a magilo. That's the circular piece of wood, which you run it across the oven, and that closes up the gaps, that closes up the holes that are in the oven. Umagilin oisa b'magilo, so Rashi, shegoylin al karkos hatanur, that you roll on the floor of the oven, eitz godil ogul, a large round piece of wood, kidei listoim hasdokim, in order to close up the cracks. Then it says, biyadu beregel, you can also close it up, I guess, with the magila, which is a wood, but also you can use your hand or your foot. And Rashi says, how does it work with the hand? Biyadu beregel, with the hand and foot, how does that work? So Rashi says, shalekeach biyodoi eitz, you take in your hand a piece of wood, uboyatim biyad, and you bang it with your hand, al hatanur, on the oven, listem hasdokin, to close the cracks. Oi, either you bang it with your hand, Or boid beraglo, you kick it with your foot. Al karkos hataner, on the floor of the oven. That's the way to cover it up. That you can do. Avaloid b'mechaltzim. Mechaltzim is a special tool for fixing the cracks. Can't do that. Rashi says, what's a mechaltzim? It's eitz kein regel. It's a wood that is made in the shape of a foot. Shedoicha koi b'mazivo, that you squeeze it into the maziva where there is the, I guess, the mortar. Listoim has dokim, to close the cracks. It has more, is considered to be more of a professional work than the regular magila. So that's the allowance for the oven, the way to fix it. Now, he allowed before to build the oven in the first place, but apparently this is talking about in the season when you're not allowed to build it, like it's talking about Sukkot time. Because otherwise, if you're allowed to build it, why would you not be allowed to? Or maybe we still don't want you to do it when he says you built it, we didn't put any restrictions on you, and that's what you asked before, Roy, about can it be done professionally or not. We didn't have that restriction over there because it was for the yontiv. Here, this is also for the yontiv, but maybe the oven can still be used even if it has the cracks. It doesn't have to be done. I've got to look this further. Anyways, now we're talking about the door locks and the different. You have the tzir. Tzir means a hinge. The hinges in those days were actually like a metal piece in the door. They put in the door, and one was in the door, and the other side went into the ground. He used to swing on the hinge. That's how the door opened and closed. It was swinging on the tzir, on the hinge. So the tzir, question is if they break, how to fix them. So hatzir, so Rashi says regel hadelis, that's the leg of the door, that's the stick, the metal that sticks out. It's called the foot of the door. Kamoi, like we say, hadelis tisoib al tzira in Mishlei Chavav. The door circles on its tzir, that's the hinge that it's on. Then the next thing is the hatzinor. Tziner is the pipe, that's the hole itself that's in the threshold in which you put that piece in which you put the tzir in. Tziner hu hachoir shebe'askufa hatachtoina. That's the hole which is in the bottom on the threshold. That's his kimoi, like we say, tzinoira the dasha. The dasha is a threshold. Tzinoira, that's the hole of the threshold. And then you have a hakoiro. Koiro is the beam, or that we call it the top of the, they call it the lintel, the top part of the doorway, that's called the beam. He says, Masha al ha-pesach, shetachzir boy hadelis, that which is on the door, that the door returns to it. I think maybe it means the door, it's a door stopper that stops the door, but that's usually translated as the upper part of the, it's called the mashkef, the lintel, the top part. But over here, Rashi says, shetachzir boy hadelis, the door turns around in it. It's called ubar. I'm wondering, I'm just trying to imagine the physical look of this thinner. There technically, shouldn't there be like two sinners, two holes, one at the top, one at the bottom, and you have the door swinging on that hinge. Isn't that not the normal? It doesn't seem like here. It seems like the beam is just, and you want the door that returns the door. I'm not exactly sure. But then we have a Haman oil. Man oil, that's Baal Bedura. That seems like, sure you know what Baal Bedura is. That's the lock. And Hamafteach. And also, that's the key. So all these that we said, these part of the door, shenishbro, and they broke. So what do you do with them when they broke? So what you do is mesaknon b'moed, you can fix them during the holiday. Meaning doing chalamoid. Chalamoid, it's okay to fix them. We consider that a necessary for the Yom Tov. If you're not going to fix it, you're going to have robbers coming into your house. You need a door. So therefore, it's considered needed for the Yom Tov. Mesaknon b'moed, you can fix it in Yom Tov. However, you might have somebody say, oh, I have time chalamoid. I'm not going to work. So instead of fixing the door during the days leading up to Chol HaMoed, you're going to leave for Chol HaMoed. So he says no. Conditional that you should not intend to do work on the Moed. In other words, if it breaks and you need to fix it, you can do it, but don't leave it for the Moed. Rashi says, when you have the ability to fix all the above during the rest of the year, and then you leave it for the Yom Tov, then you can't do it. That you can't do. So he says, "V'chol kuvoshim." Anytime you need to have sink soaking, kuvoshim. So what happens is all kinds of kvoshim shu yochel lechel mehem b'moed. If you are able to eat from it on the Yom Tov, koifsham, then you can marinate it. I don't know what we call koifsham. You can marinate it. You can do it. Rashi explains. Kvoshim shel tzir. This is the tzir. This is the sharp. Something that you marinate in. Koloimar. Dogim ushar devorim. You have sometimes fish or other things shekoivshim b'melach that you soak it, marinate it in the salt. Sheyuchel la'ochlam b'mayit, and you can eat it during the Yom Tov. In other words, it'll be ready when it's marinated that you're able to eat it on Yom Tov. Shelo yehei tzorich lahamtin b'chilosom ad achar hamoyed. He's not going to have to wait to eat the fish, whatever is marinating. He has to wait till after the Yom Tov. Sheyiu nechboshim maher v'royin lechel miyad. They are being marinated quickly, and they're eaten immediately. That you can do. Sheyochel lechem b'moyed. So kosher. Then he's allowed to do that. But I guess if he's not allowed, if he can't go so fast, so then he's not allowed to do it on Yom Tov because you are working for after Yom Tov, and that's not allowed. That's the Mishnah. Let's do the Gemara. So the Gemara says to build the wall we were talking about in the Mishnah, you can only do ordinary, common person's work, but you can't do craftsman. Frag die Gemara, how is it ordinary work? So Rabbi Yosef says, behutza. Hutza are palm tree, like lulav of a palm tree. Behutza. And daphna, that's another kind of tree. A daphna tree. Avdi l'chayim shel geder. L'chayim shel geder. You could make the lechis of the fence. I guess the lechis are the side posts which hold the fence. I guess the hutz and daphna, the actual fence itself is from other material, but this is the lechayim hutza. The daphna avdi lechayim shall gather. You make the posts of the gather. That's apparently a very light, not a heavy, not a craftsman. These are easy. Anybody can put that up. But b'masnisa tono, in a brayse we learn that it means tzor b'tzroir, ve'ene toch b'tit. So what he does is that he uses wood or stone stacker, but he connects the people with the pieces with pebbles, but he does not smear mortar on it. I wonder how this holds. It's supposed to be a mica. How does this actually hold? I mentioned before. What does he do to it that it's stay? You place a stone agabe heaven and you put pebbles of stone in between them to connect them. That's considered amateur work, but I guess it holds with the pebbles that you put in the meantime, so it holds it because it's supposed to be a fence, a mic. All right. Next, we learned about closing up the cracks in the oven. So we learned that shofin esas dokim, you can close the cracks, umagilin oisa b'magila, and then you can roll it with that wood roller. But then the Mishnah also said by hand and by foot. So the Gemara asks, if he's allowing you to use the roller, he allows him to use the magila. So the Gemara says, hashto the magila, if he allows you to use the magila, so then for sure he should allow you to use your hand and your foot. So why does the Mishnah even have to tell you that you can use your hand or your foot if he even allows you to use the Magillah? If he allows you, now that he lets you use the Magillah, which is derech, Rashi says, umanus yiseiru yosef. This is more of a craft. Amrit shori, you say you're permissible, you're allowed to. Biyadu beregel miboyer. So does he then the Mishnah have to tell you that by hand and foot that you're allowed to do that? That's using a tool and you're allowed to do it. How come the Mishnah has said by hand and foot? Biyadu beregel. The lav meiser umanhu, that is not craftsman's work. Like Kolshkein for sure. So why would the Mishnah have to mention that? The Gemara says, this is what he's saying. Shofines as dokim, you can close up the cracks. Umagilin oiso ke'ein magila. You can roll it up similar. You can't actually use a magila. Can't use that, but similar. Biyad uberegel, by hand and by foot, but not similar to a magila. Rashi explains, ke'ein magila, veloy magilo mamish, but not actual magila. Magilo, you're not allowed to the roller. Elokein magila b'yadu b'regel, but similar to what the magila does, but you use your hand and your foot, but not the magila itself. Avaloi b'melchatzim, but you can't use that special tool, the yad regel. So, not so sure over here. So why doesn't the Mishnah not say Avaloy b'Magila instead of Loy b'Machaltzim? Machaltzim is a real tool. That's not even the Magila as we learned before in the Mishnah. It seems like Rashi is saying here that a Magila itself you cannot use. Only as the one Ke'ein Magila, Yad V'Regel. But not a Magila Mamish. But then the Mishnah goes and says, Avaloy b'Machaltzim. That would tell us that you can't use that special tool. Rashi said earlier that what was the Machaltzim, Rashi said? Rashi touched before in the Mishnah. Machaltzim eitz kein regel. But this is not the Magila. It would be a little bit hard. Why would the Mishnah say Avaloy b'Machaltzim? You got to look this up. Further, we learned Hatzir, V'Hatzinor, V'Hakoiro. Those are the hinges and the hole and the lintel and the lock, the key, Mafteach, Shenishberu, that were broken, Misaknon b'Moed. You can fix it during Chol HaMoed. Now, this kind of work requires banging with a hammer. And the Gemara brings down the Reminu. I'll ask you a question because it says, Ad Yomov Hoya Patish Makeb Yerushalayim Chulin. Till the days of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, there was hammers banging on Chol HaMoed. People were fixing those things that were necessary, even though they used this hammer. But it seems quite clearly that after his time, he didn't allow it anymore. So how come in our Mishnah we're fixing it? These work require the use of a hammer. Again, let's look at Rashi. Ad Yomov, Rashi, until the days shall Yochanan Kohen Gadol, that Yochanan Kohen Gadol hoya patish makim b'Yerushalayim b'Chol HaMoed. There was a hammer that was banging in Yerushalayim during Chol HaMoed. V'hu gazer alav ubitlei. He decreed and he nullified it. Said no, alma osu. So you see that it's prohibited. The masnisin kotani. But in our Mishnah we learn that we could fix it. That requires the banging of a hammer. So how come the Mishnah allows that? So the Gemara asked, Ad Yomov in only up till the days of Yochanan Kohen Gadol. But Mekan ve'elach loy, you can't. So how come we say the Mishnah that you can do it? And the Gemara says, depending what kind of hammer you're talking about. Look, Kashi, this isn't really a question. Because Kan b'denafchi, we're talking about a smith, a metal they use the bang, it makes a lot of noise. B'denafchi, the patish, his hammer, hainu kurnus, that's called the kurnus, the strong one, that is also, that's prohibited. Why? The havi kolorabo, that's a loud voice, kolorabo. V'oludi kolo also, and to make this voice, he prohibited. I mean, he didn't allow you to do that. Not sure, what does it mean? The oiludi, to give birth to make noise. It's prohibited. He didn't allow that. But Kan, where it says you're allowed to, is talking about Bidenagri. It's talking about the carpenters. Carpenters, Masnisin, the Mesaknin, Eilu b'Chol HaMoed. Our Mishnah says that you can do it in Chol HaMoed It's talking about the Nagri. It's talking about the carpenters. The manel shel eitz shori. Not the carpenters. It's talking the lock is made out of wood. The on metal, it's not a. I thought it was a different hammer. It's a different material. Nafchi. It means I guess they have to. The smith. They have to maybe heat it up and they have to bang it out to straighten it out or something like that. But with the Nagri, so Rashi said, I thought it was a different kind of hammer, but Rashi says it's a different kind of a lock. The manel shleit shori, a wooden a lock is permissible. The lahavi kolaraba because there's not such a loud voice. So the difference is in what kind of a lock it is, whether you're allowed to do it or not. So Maskiv lo Rab Chizda, but Rab Chizda challenged this answer because Yoimru people will say Kol Rabba Osir, Kol Zutir Shori. They'll say that you cannot do a loud voice, but you can do a small voice. If the prohibition is against making noise on Yom Tov, but this wouldn't fit it. Hello, Omar Rab Chizda lo kashi. He gives another answer. Ho b'magli. Magli, talking about Mosar Hagodol Shori, the Lemelit Kolo Klum. This is a large, I guess, Hobi Hitzni, that makes a loud noise. But Magli, there is no voice at all. I don't know. I think that this is actually a different kind of tool. When he says,
I wonder if the Steinsaltz has some pictures.
yeah, I'm sure there is. Okay, so Bechatzino, I think this word beraro, that's probably the French word for it. Meser HaGodl, Rashi just say that makes no noise at all. And Bechatzini, it says Berara Osir, because it makes a louder voice. Rapapa Omar, he gives another answer. He says, Kan koidim gezeira, kan lacha gezeira. That's not a problem. Our Mishnah is talking about before the decree. So that's why he said you can do it. And Kan, when he said that you can't do it, is lacha gezeira, is after the decree. Lachar shegozar yechnu kohen godel, after yechnu kohen godel decree. And Ravashi Omar, Ravashi says, Horab Yehuda, Horab Yosef. That this goes, according to Rabbi Yehuda, goes like Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't allow all this. The question is, and you touched on it before. Again, we're going back to the same thing. The Gemara will discuss it later. If we are doing a davar ha'avid, do we also need to do a change? Does it has to be done with a change? according to Rabbi Yossi, it doesn't have to be done through a change. It can be done directly. So I guess our Mishnah goes like Rabbi Yossi. Rashi says, why? Because he just allows you to do it even without a change. But I don't know how the Gemara is answering the question of Kohen Gadol over here. So let's just look inside first what the Gemara says. Rashi Omar, Horab Yehuda, Horab Yossi. The Pirka de Kamon in the Perik later on Yud Beis Omad Aleph, the Rabbi Yossi leboi lishnuyi ledover ha'ovid. Rabbi Yossi doesn't require any changes. If it's an item that is lost, you're allowed to do it, no changes. Umasnisin de shori hocha. Our Mishnah that allows kol hani below shinui, allows without any change, goes like Rabbi Yossi. Okay. Dom Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdima, man tono shinu b'moed b'dover ha'ovid. Who is the one that says that you need to make a change, even if it's something that is lost? He says, "Look at Rabbi Yossi, doesn't go to Rabbi Yossi." But I don't understand. You have to look this up also. I don't understand, but we just brought down a problem from Kohen Gadol, Yochanan Kohen Gadol, and he seemed to disallow something that was permissible. So the Gemara's question was, the Gemara's original thought is that our Mishnah should allow this, but it's not a question. The question is the noise factor. There was a different issue over here. The reason it doesn't allow it was for the noise factor. And if the Gemara thinks that our Mishnah was written after Rabbi Yehuda, but the answer is okay. I gotta see. I'll leave it for next time. I gotta see why. Seems like that has a different issue, not this issue exactly. All right, but here again today. Let's leave it over here. Again, I'm going to run to Daven Mincha over here.